Hello, everybody.
Hi there. Welcome to Myth Busting Mondays.
Yes, today we're going to take on a little colloquialism you've probably heard before. This idea that you should pick your battles.
Right?
Any of you ever hear that?
Yeah.
Pick your battles.
Pick your battles. So when you're in a relationship, when you're dating somebody, pick your battles. You shouldn't fight about everything. You shouldn't be a complainer. Why be an annoying person who's always got a problem?
Wow, that had a lot of energy on it. Hey, look, here's the thing. If you're dating somebody, you're in relationship with somebody, you're married to somebody, you live with somebody, you're not at war with that person.
Right.
You're not at war. So you don't actually have to pick your battles. The phrase itself assumes conflict and is right there. Like you're already in the conflict. Like war is pretty intense, right? Because war is over territory. So if you're picking your battles, then that means you're trying to gain, trying to win, there's no other way to look at your partner other than as your opponent.
Exactly. Eek, right? And when you're trying to win something from your opponent, right, you're in an ego battle. You're in a power struggle. And if you're thinking about picking your battles, you're going, well, this fight is a fight I probably will never win, so I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to sit and resentfully stew about it, right? Ew, that doesn't create connection. That doesn't create love. That doesn't create a team working together. I mean, we get it. You're two different people with two different desires, oftentimes.
And oftentimes different strategies for dealing with the same thing.
Exactly.
Right? So you're two different people. So how do you work this out? Well, first off, let me say what I hate the most about that phrase, because I really hate it. I hate this idea of pick your battles because it automatically assumes that you should discount how you feel. Yeah. And I just, that really bothers me a lot. So here's the deal. You don't have to pick your battles because your feelings are always valid.
Your feelings are valid.
We should say it again, like a third time. We're going to say it in unison. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Your feelings are always valid.
Nope, your feelings are always valid.
There we go.
I screwed that
up.
So your feelings are valid. So what does that mean, right? It means that what you're feeling is valid. It makes sense. It's normal. It's human. It's okay to have feelings in relationship. It's okay to have negative feelings in relationships, right? Now, it doesn't mean when we say your feelings are valid that your desires about what you want to do about your feelings are necessarily the right decision or necessarily valid, right? Just because you feel something doesn't mean you have the right to do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, no, you don't. I mean, I think where people get messed up is like a lot of times we are raised by people who discount our feelings. And so we grow up with the habit of discounting our own feelings. So here's the deal. Your feelings are important, but they're not the most important thing because they're transitory, right? I mean, have you ever, I just think it's funny, like when we're unhappy, when we feel badly, we like fall into this pit of despair thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get out of this. I'll always be grieving. I'll always be sad. I'll always be angry. I'll always whatever.
Right.
And yet when we're blissfully happy, we're not nearly as delusional, right? Because nobody ever says, oh my gosh, I'm so blissfully happy. I think I'm going to feel this way forever, right? Said nobody ever. So here's the deal. Your feelings are transitory. So they are valid, meaning they're information for you to evaluate. For you to evaluate. There's a lot of other people who think they need to process, meaning talk about their feelings every single time they have a feeling with their partner.
Right.
Tell me how men feel about that.
I can't even, right? I can't even fathom the idea of having to process every feeling that this lovely woman next to me has, right? It's a bit too much. I'm already feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, and can we just move on, right? So it's not about, right, it's your feelings being valid isn't about you having to talk about them all the time, but it is when we say about pick your battles, right? That means you're stuffing down something because you think it's not as important as this other thing that you also need to have a battle about or have a fight about with your partner. So instead, right, what do we do instead? Instead of
Well,
picking our battles.
I want to say one more thing before
Okay.
we get there instead
Sure.
of picking battles, because clearly we don't like this phrase, right? We're a little passionate here at Love on Purpose, right? We just don't like this thing about picking your battles. You're not at war with your partner. But here's the thing, it's not so much juggling what's important to you, it's juggling what's important to you and it's making assumptions about your partner and what's important to him or her.
Mhm.
So here's the deal. You should never, never sacrifice your own happiness for someone else's comfort. Should never sacrifice your own happiness for someone else's comfort.
Yeah.
We had a friend and client, friend slash client, who was dating this fellow and he broke up with her. And one of the reasons he gave her for breaking up with her was because she never took the first table that was offered to them when they would go out to eat. Like
Right.
when they go out to eat and the hostess would go to seat them, she'd always want a different table. And so that was one of the reasons he gave for ending the relationship. And we were like, what?
Exactly. I mean, the person who's seating you at the restaurant, it's their job is to find a table for you, right? Whether you don't like the first one they give you or not, you know what? That's a minor inconvenience to them. They're going to go find you another table. In fact, most people who are good at being a host or a hostess at a restaurant are going to try to seat you in the worst table so that they can save their better tables, right?
For the people
like
who
our
are client,
like our client who are going to say,
picky.
yeah, who are picky, right?
Or like me, I also want
So,
the nice table.
so you don't always have to end up sitting next to, the bus station,
Or
or
the
sitting
kitchen
next to the
door.
kitchen door, right? Or
Yeah.
sitting next to the front door and getting a breeze every time somebody comes in, right? So oftentimes, and we see this with so many of our clients, is they're so concerned about everybody else's feelings, right? That they're sacrificing their own happiness because they don't want to make other people uncomfortable.
Right.
And I mean, we say it that way. Don't sacrifice your happiness for somebody else's comfort, because we want to put them in terms of, weighing them about which sounds more important. Your happiness sounds more important than somebody else's comfort.
And I think a lot of times people sacrifice their own well-being. It goes well beyond the
Yeah.
happiness because it becomes a habit and a pattern that becomes very difficult to break. So never sacrifice your happiness or your well-being for someone else's comfort. You should speak up about what it is that's going on with you, right? You should have a voice. I always am amazed when I tell my clients how I used to be not so vocal.
I don't know that person. I swear, I don't know the one who never spoke up, right?
So I was at a resort spa in Mexico on vacation, and I was in a wrap thing. And long story short is I felt some discomfort, but I never said anything about it. And I ended up having like a dollar-sized coin blister on my tushy, which actually ruined the rest of my vacation. It was very difficult to sit. I couldn't do any of the water. We were staying at this beautiful place right on the ocean, Mexico. I couldn't go in the ocean water. I couldn't do anything because I couldn't let this thing get infected. And I didn't speak up and say, oh my gosh, I'm uncomfortable. I think something's wrong here. And I just kind of gritted, like just went through the treatment because I'd never had a treatment at a spa like that with the wrap and the heat and the thing and the, I was like, and Matthew knows, like, I like being hot. So
Yeah.
being hot doesn't bother me, but there was something else going on. And when the whole treatment finished and I found this blister on me, I was mortified because even just sitting down was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know, like, I've come along. When I tell that story, I think, wow, I've really come a long way because
like I said, I don't know that person, right?
So
my wife always speaks up about what she wants. So the thing is, it's one thing to speak up, at a restaurant or with a massage treatment or a hotel or whatever and say, hey, this isn't, like I thought it was going to be. It should be better, right? It's another thing to grin your teeth and bear it in a relationship with somebody that you're in it for the long haul, right? To always be sort of biting your tongue, holding back because you're afraid that you're going to cause conflict, right? And so it's not about either causing conflict or not causing conflict.
It's so binary.
Exactly. It's
right.
about learning how to communicate so that you can talk about what's going on with you without constantly putting your partner on the defensive.
And here's the deal. Speaking how you feel is not nagging It is not complaining.
It's not.
I think it's interesting when people, hear us talk about this idea of speaking your truth and sharing how you feel with somebody. That ultimately is how we create connection with another person, right? When you speak how you feel and that other person speaks how they feel, now you can find that place for connection. And so I think sometimes this whole idea of picking your battles actually keeps the intimacy, the emotional intimacy out of the equation, because we don't have the courage to speak up about something. So we'll tell you another story about a client that we coached a few years back who's an actress, and she booked a job on a film, and she was really, really nervous through this process because she was having a problem on the set. So she was having a problem, and she didn't say something and didn't say something and didn't say something. And after a few days, and she'd been coaching with us about all this about speaking up, she pulled the director aside and shared her frustration and asked if there was something the director could do about the situation on set. And the director said, "That's bothering me too. I thought I was the only one. I will address that. Thank you." They created a bond on set, had a great rest of the shoot for the film. And not only that, she created not only a better working environment for other people on the set, she created a different, deeper connection with that director, where that director then hired her again and again. So, it takes courage. Like, we want to tell you that this idea of speaking up, right? Whether it's in the workplace, in your home, with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, with the person at the restaurant, at the spa, whatever it is, it takes practice. And this is what we want you to know is if you're not good at this, that's okay, because you haven't practiced. And so I always joke that even doctors are only practicing medicine, right? They're just practicing. So, they're not always going to give you a 100% answer. Like, what's this thing? Well, I don't know. We got to run some tests, right? So run a diagnostic on yourself and say, okay, where am I really good about speaking up? And where am I not so good? And the reason why I'm picking that is because that's how I went from the person who wouldn't say stuff to the person who does say stuff, because I realized that one of the things I was always speaking up for was for other people. I worked in the entertainment industry for over 3 decades, and I knew a lot of people, and I knew a lot of influential people, and I would ask for my friends some favors, but I never asked any for myself. And so there was one year I made a pact with myself that if I was willing to speak up for someone else, then I better be willing to speak up for myself, because I was just as important and valid as this other person that I would be willing to risk and speak up for. So that's the way I did it. I'm just sharing that little tip because maybe for some of you that find it hard to speak up and you're sort of weighing these options around picking your battles, don't be at war with your partner, because your partner is just a whole nother person. And if you share what's going on with you, you might be surprised that they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that that's what was going on for you," right? So you don't have to pick your battles. It's about learning these communication skills and really practicing them. You're not going to be good at it overnight. Just like everything else you ever learned how to do, you started off not being good at it. So you have to be willing to risk to not be good at it at first.
You may find if you get really good at using what we call I language, right? I feel this, I'm noticing this, I think this, right? I, instead of you, right? Which isn't really helpful. You may notice that the person you're in relationship with, even though you're really good at saying, "Hey, I feel and I'd like," and I'm thinking, that they are like, "What? No." And they either shut you down, say, "No, you shouldn't feel that. Why are you feeling that?" Or they get defensive. "Hey, it's not my fault, right? I didn't do anything wrong," right? And if they're consistently over time having those kind of responses and they're not able to hear you, you're going to learn a lot about that person. You also may discover, though, that somebody you think is not capable of hearing you suddenly is, and is suddenly able to meet you at that high vibration of authenticity. And suddenly you're able to create a connection with somebody that you never would have expected. Growing up, my mom was just a wonderful woman. She was a great hostess. She was a great mom. She was a great cook, so many great qualities. But one of her favorite phrases, and I'm not saying this in a good way, but one of her favorite phrases was, "I'm fine. I'm fine. My mom was always fine." Right? And you can go through life being fine. And we know what that really means, right? That, things aren't great, but you're not going to speak up about it because, why? Right? Instead, things could be really great. Things could be amazing. Things could be awesome. Things could be really lovely. Things could just be peaceful and joyful, right? Instead of just fine.
Yeah, and I think when I always say I won the in-law lottery. My mother-in-law was such a lovely woman, and I remember that one of the things Matthew said about her was he'd never heard her complain. She just took everything in stride and didn't necessarily speak up. And it's one of these things where how do you want to be showing up in the world? Because when you risk to speak your truth, you offer the opportunity to create that deeper connection with someone else. And what we want to say is you don't actually have to pick your battles. If you're showing up authentically and you're taking responsibility for whatever it is that's going on with you. Like Matthew talked about using I language, right? I feel this, I feel that. I remember long before I got really good at it, when I was still practicing, right? And you may find that, these kinds of things happen as you're practicing and getting better at those nonviolent communication techniques. So I remember Matthew and I were going for a walk on the beach. We live at the beach. And this is before we worked together. Matthew had another business and he had some issues with his business partner. And he shared some about his frustrations. And then when, I've been listening, and then I said to him, you should, blah, 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 blah. And there was just like this pause, and Matthew stops walking for a second. He turns and looks at me and he goes, I could hear you a lot better if you said it differently than starting with you should. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
And I remember thinking, oh, right. I could say this better. I could say it differently. So you have to be willing to sometimes get it wrong. And that's okay, right? Because when you're with the right person, then you can't make the mistake of losing them. It's not when I think sometimes we get so attached to the person that we're afraid to risk because we think we might scare that person off. Like the person you're in a relationship with is like a little feral, cat that you don't want to scare away.
Scamper. Oh,
yeah,
like, she's gone.
Yeah, or a little chipmunk or something. It's like a small woodland creature you're going to scare off in the night or something. And like, look, I get it. I do understand that because I used to feel all the time like I'd be dating somebody, and as soon as there was the tiniest bump in the road, whoosh, he would disappear. Whoosh, he would disappear. Whoosh, he would disappear. But what I realized was a lot of times I was dating these guys that I wasn't in a relationship with. I was having a convenience with them. That's not a relationship, right? Either we would enjoy certain activities together or it was just about sex. Really.
And when things become inconvenient because she was speaking about how she felt, the guy's like, I'm gone. This is not what I want. Right. Yeah. So the thing is, a guy who wants a relationship with you, he's going to want to hear how you're feeling. He's going to want to know how to make you happy. Now, he may not always be great at hearing you. He may sometimes get a little defensive, but he's going to listen, he's going to learn, and he's going to get better at it because he wants to please you.
He's going to make a change. He's going to adapt based on what you've said. And same with the ladies, right? So the men out there, you're dating some women, we want you to know it's the same thing. If there's something on your mind, if there's something that you want to address, then you've got to pipe up about it. You've got to have a conversation about it. So risk for the reward of that deep connection with the other person. Remember, you don't have to pick your battles. Let's get rid of that colloquialism for good. It doesn't belong in our languaging around our intimate relationships. Really, it just doesn't.
It's not useful. It's not helpful.
You're not at war. You want to live in a peacetime relationship, right? Where you can have conversations and connect and enjoy each other. And that when problems arise, you have the foundation of being able to work your way through those challenges, because life will inevitably throw curveballs your way. We know during this particular time, there's a lot of stress in the world around this pandemic and all kinds of stuff for financial distress, right?
Mhm.
And you and your partner may not have the same strategies for dealing with the same stimuli. So give yourself a little bit extra grace, give your partner a little bit of extra grace. And we want to remind you to join us tomorrow live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for
Ask O&M Live. So it's your opportunity to ask us your love, dating, and relationship questions live with us, and we'll address whatever comes up from anybody. Any questions, bring it to us. Also, every Monday is Myth Busting Mondays, where we address the myths about love and relationship that we think get in the way of people being happy and having happy, loving, connected relationships. So if there's something you want us to address in our Myth Busting Mondays, feel free to put a comment here, or put a comment in the group, and we'll be happy to tackle it as well.
And if you have a question that you want us to answer tomorrow, join us live. That's really how we would like things to roll, right? We want to take questions live for the Ask O and M. By the way, I'm the O, he's the M. And we'll see you tomorrow for Ask O and M Live. Bye for now.
Have a great night.